So, Tom, I want to play a clip today from
Yep.
Justin Trudeau, and I'm going to play a lengthy clip. I thought today, I said this to our producer, to Brian, earlier today when I heard the clip, I thought Justin Trudeau was on fire today, but he was asked about something that I'd not heard of up until today, which was the Chinese influence as far as elections goes in the Vancouver mayoral race. Hadn't heard about this. I want you to hear what he had to say. Here's his answer to that question.
Allegations that a foreign country is interfering in elections at any level need to be taken seriously. But if people jump to conclusions and start throwing around allegations, are not only harmful to an individual, it's also harming the very institutions, the integrity of our institutions and our democracies that we're trying to protect. If China and Russia and others are trying to destabilize our democracies, it's not even what they might do to impact the outcome of the elections that is the best way for them to destabilize our democracies. It's in undermining the fundamental confidence we all have in those institutions in the first place that can be most harmful to our country.
Give me a reaction to just that, Tom, to start with.
That's a very bizarre intervention by Mr. Trudeau because by the way, the person who was defeated as mayor of Vancouver, Kennedy Stewart, was a member of parliament in my caucus. When I was the leader of the NDP, he decided to step down from federal politics and run as mayor of Vancouver, and he was elected, and he served a 4-year term. And he was also a very strong critic of the Chinese Communist Party and its regime in Beijing. And lo and behold, out of nowhere, there were very strong attacks against Kennedy Stewart, for example, on a television station, a Chinese language television station in Vancouver that just happens to belong to the Chinese Communist Party. And it went through the communities. And so I don't see how Mr. Trudeau can be in a state of high dudgeon saying that the biggest problem that we've got is if they're undermining our institutions by getting us to talk about it. The way to avoid people undermining our institutions is to put all this on the table, because in Kennedy Stewart's case, it was really put very clearly. Again, it was Bob Fife. It was in the Globe and Mail. It was all there yesterday. But there's more to come. I mean, this is a huge story, and it's been completely overlooked here in the province of Quebec. On the South Shore, when we found out that the RCMP was investigating what are being called, because, of course, they're not actually police stations, but what are being called, in shorthand, police stations run by the Chinese Communist Party. Well, guess what? One of the people who got elected there are people there in that area, in that town, south of Montreal, saying, well, this is not on. How can this person possibly still be sitting there on our town council when she got in, because of this gimmick that they had of getting people connected through the Chinese government and giving them instructions for one, in shorthand. That's exactly what happened. So I think that one of the things that we have to be very wary of is underplaying what happened. It's not the fault of the people who are talking about this, and that's what was so bizarre about Trudeau's quote there.
Okay. The other clip I'm going to play, by the way, doesn't concern itself with that. I'm just curious what your reaction to that was. And then, of course, we had Pierre Poilievre jumping up and down today, yet again, as to be expected over this as well. But almost starting to look, Tom, just my opinion, almost comical when it comes to this.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, if you're talking about Pierre Poilievre's bizarre attack on David Johnston, it's so unseemly. And that proves that Poilievre is looking at a political game, and he's not looking to defend the institutions. This is fundamental. We live in a democracy, and democracies are the minority of countries in the world. And we've got to cherish and protect our democracy. And it is clear that it has been under very orchestrated attack in terms of our elections, and we just gave examples at the municipal level. We know that somebody had to step down from Doug Ford's government at the provincial level, and of course we know what's been happening at the federal level. So it's not a question of guesswork. Trudeau is almost suggesting that, even talking about it, that's part of the problem because it undermines people's confidence in our electoral process. No, people are lacking confidence in our electoral process because they know that there have been attempts by foreign powers, in particular the Chinese government, to meddle in our elections. So that's what he should be putting his emphasis on, not upbraiding people and berating them for actually caring so much about this that they want it to be dealt with by the government. Trudeau's trying to have it both ways. He's trying to say, well, I'm going to get David Johnston to give me a bit of a breather here because it's going to take him some time to get a mandate and then come up with some lines. And at the same time, he's trying to tell everybody, move along, there's nothing to see. I think that Trudeau is losing a lot of credibility when he does that.
I was thinking the same thing. It almost seems a little bit quaint, right? Like, and clearly today he wanted all the attention to be on this $4 billion housing announcement.
Right. I mean, they do have all of the tools in a massive government tool chest. They can roll out plans and programs and billions of dollars at the drop of a hat to try to get attention off things. I remember we were doing one radio show earlier in the week, and they had made some lame announcement about something, and all of a sudden that was supposed to be the news, and we weren't supposed to talk about China anymore. Well, the Chinese government and what it did. So, no, not so much. I think that it shouldn't disappear from the headlines. I'm also convinced, and that's my Journal de Montréal piece today, I'm also convinced that Trudeau is playing the clock. He's looking at the possible alignment of the stars for a fall election and stalling this thing to make sure that if there's going to be an inquiry, and there will be, he just wants to make sure it doesn't interfere with his election plans.
Yeah, I think he thinks we haven't figured this out. Okay, let's move on to the ICC, so the International Criminal Courts.
Yes.
They've put forth an arrest warrant for Putin, accusing him of war crimes in Ukraine, but the Russian government is saying, whatever, this has no significance. Does it?
Well, this is really huge news. So the International Criminal Court, of course, is highly respected. It does its work, and it's interesting because they're not going after a piece that involves bombing civilians and things like that. They're talking very specifically about a well-oiled scheme to kidnap Ukrainian children and bring them to Russia and have them adopted by Russian families, something that's been approved by Putin and people at the highest level. So this Russification. So this is a clear war crime against humanity, and they have issued 2 major arrest warrants, one for Vladimir Putin himself and one for the woman who put this program and executed it.
Maria Zakharova.
Okay, but Tom, you say this is a big story and a big deal, but we know that at the end of the day, from what we're reading here, nothing will come of this. So it's symbolic more than anything else, isn't it?
Well, that's what Milosevic thought as well, and the other people who were responsible for the war crimes in the former Yugoslavia, and yet some of them died in prison because they were eventually tracked down and caught. Because Putin's not going to remain in power forever in Russia. He'll be replaced. They might or might not try to protect him. One of the easiest ways to get rid of him would be to turn him over. So having these warrants in place now, of course they can't go and arrest him in the Kremlin, but having those warrants in place now, keep everything open. All bets are off for when they will eventually be able to nab Putin.
All right. So Natasha mentioned that $4 billion housing fund. I think we talked about this before. I mean, it's all well and good to say you're going to be spending all this money, but we know housing is a municipal issue. It's not just the federal government going in and saying, here's some money, waving it at all the provinces or all the cities and saying this should solve everything. So what's this worth at the end of the day?
Well, not lots, because every time they announce these housing programs, it never gets built. The money is there, it's waved around, and as you correctly say, Aaron, if you look at the actual performance, it's been incredibly weak. Mm-hmm. They've announced this type of money before, these multi-billion programs in housing by the feds. This program has been announced any number of times, but they just never get it off the drawing board. There is a point that Pierre Poilievre makes. He talks about gatekeepers and as if he's the one who's going to decide zoning issues in municipalities. But Poilievre has one thing that's going to attract a bit of attention. He says, look, I'm going to put money on the table, and if you don't pick it up and if you don't deliver on time, there's going to be a penalty. So your province's share of that money might disappear if you're just not a reliable partner on this. So I think on that, Poilievre's going to be scoring a lot with people who care about the housing issue.
All right. I would like to get your perspective on what I'm seeing as like a mental health crisis. And we've been in this situation for a little while, but these recent events in Amqui and then in Rosemont today, triple homicide. And I think about the Premier calling on people to do more ourselves, right? To be more forthcoming if we see someone in mental crisis. But we know in both these cases that it was kind of known that these people had been in mental crisis.
And we all work for Bell Media, and I think we can be very, very proud of the fact that the owner of CJAD 800 and a lot of other properties has made it a priority in terms of their social engagement to talk about this and to get people to know that they can talk about mental health issues and to go get help whenever they think that they need it. So that's an important thing being done socially by one big company, Bell, but there are a lot of other people out there on the same page. We got to be careful also. I mean, every time something happens, you're not necessarily going to be able to start doing a diagnosis and deciding that that this or that or the other event was related to a mental health issue. Bad stuff happens. But I think that overall, if there's more awareness in our society and less stigmatization, then maybe we'll be able to move forward. What I found distressing about the events this week in Amqui was the rush to judgment and just the behavior. I mean, it was almost as if he was being made to walk the gauntlet. I have nothing but contempt, and I understand people's anger. But to have marched him with his hands behind his back outside in the cold with only a T-shirt on in front of a group of local people so that they could boo and hiss and say terrible things to him, I thought that was unseemly if indeed we're dealing with somebody with a profound mental health issue.
Fair enough. Tom, last thing before we get out of here and have no time. It's been a bit of a rough ride for the RCMP through commissioners. There's a new one now named as the interim. His name is Michael Duhem. What do you know about him?
Well, he's got an unbelievable record of achievement within the police force, and I think that he seems to have all the qualities required. Now, a lot of the people who are talking about the RCMP today are actually talking about whether or not the force should be redefined, because it simply does too many things. One of the people talking about it compared the RCMP's organogram to an Escher sketch, where they have endless staircases going off in all directions. How can you have a national police force that's akin in some respects to the FBI that's actually handing out traffic tickets in Dauphin, Manitoba? I mean, the Laval-sized suburb of Vancouver called Surrey, the RCMP is the local police force. It doesn't even make any sense. So we've got them acting as local police across the country. In the north, in sparsely populated areas, fine. I think that most provinces, starting with Alberta and BC, should have provincial police forces, frankly, same way Quebec and Ontario and Newfoundland, Labrador do, just because it makes more sense. You don't have the national police force doing all this local policing. So maybe this is going to be the guy, because he's been at every level. He's really respected. And if they do name him as the permanent commissioner, maybe he'll be able to bring in some of the changes that everybody's known for a long time are absolutely necessary.
Tom Mulcair. Tom, you have a good weekend.
You guys too.